The BLAST R6 Munich Major is upon us, which means people are getting their predictions in. I've been participating in the official Ubisoft predictions since they came out with mixed success. I'm usually pretty good at predicting which teams make it through to playoffs, but the exact order is another thing. The Swiss stage is just so hard to predict because you literally don't know what the matchups are going to be. But regardless, I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring once again and give my thoughts on the teams attending this year's major. I'll go through each team region by region, give a brief summary of where I think they're at going into this event, and then I'll end it off by going through my initial predictions for the Swiss stage. To start things off, let's check out the region I watched the least this stage, EML. Usually this is one of my more watched regions, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out that way this time around. First up is BDS. I'm both surprised and impressed that they got here. To me, this team is made up of, maybe not misfits, but leftovers. With their previous roster departing after SI earlier this year, the org was forced to quickly put together a team consisting of remnants from 3 different disbanded teams and Virtue after he left Team Secret. The leftovers. Individually, this team has a lot of talent and some pretty big names. The question was whether they gel well together, and through Reload, Stage 1, and even most of Stage 2, the answer was pretty clear. But against the odds, they put together a good enough stage to make it here, and like I said, I'm impressed. But then I looked at how they got here, and they lost some points. They finished middle of the pack in the group stage, which isn't bad, but they only won against teams lower than them and then got stomped by the ones above them. Actually, the only team higher than them that they beat all stage was Gen G in the first round of the playoffs. Speaking of Gen G, these guys can't qualify for an event to save their life, or at the very least, beat G2 when it really matters. But that same luck that resulted in them missing out on this major is the same luck that allowed BDS to qualify. Had the matchups for the lower bracket qualifying matches been different in any way, I don't think I'd be talking about BDS right now. I don't like saying it, but they got handed a win by a Wolves team that didn't even show up. Had it been G2, they definitely wouldn't have qualified, and had it been Gen G, I think it would have been closer, but I still think Gen G could have and probably would have taken it. Going into the major, I think they could be an 0-3 team in the Swiss stage. At best, a 1-3. If they manage to get 2-3, it's a win, but I don't think they make playoffs for the simple fact that they can't seem to beat a team that's better than them. And right now, that's almost every other team here. Their goal for this tournament is to simply not be an 0-3 team. For G2 and Secret, I'm going to talk about them together because their stories are very similar for this event. After being the top 2 at EWC, they need a good follow-up. They need to show that it wasn't just a one-off or a Cinderella run. They need to show that they are that level of team. Anything short of playoffs is a disappointment for both, and I know that may sound obvious, but I'm trying to set realistic expectations for them. Demanding top 2 from them again is unrealistic and honestly a little unfair to me. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, that's just where I'm setting my expectations. Top 8 is the bar, and anything above that is a win. If one were to falter, right now my gut says it's G2. In my head, they're a potential bubble team for playoffs. They could be a 2-3 team in Swiss, but at the same time, they could very easily qualify for playoffs. It kind of just depends on which version of them shows up on the day. But anytime I bet against G2, they win, so they're probably fine. Of the two, the team that I really want to have a good event is Secret. Yes, their win at EWC was a surprise, there's no arguing that. But I don't think it's as big of a surprise as some people think, and I want them to show that by having a good tournament. Last year, while everyone was focusing on BDS's amazing but heartbreaking run, Team Secret was consistently the second best team in Europe all year and a top 8 team globally. The only blip was a poor finish at SI, but then they followed that up by taking EWC. I really do think they flew under the radar because everyone was so focused on BDS. For me, they're a top 4 team going into this tournament. 2-0 versus G2 in playoffs. Yes, they did lose to Falcons in the finals, so they come in as the second seed, but that was after beating them 2-0 in the upper bracket finals and then only losing in a map 3 overtime in the grand finals. Technically, they went 3-2 against Falcons in the playoffs, so if it was a best of 5 Falcons are looking for a bounce back. After the amazing year that they had last year, this competitive year hasn't been the greatest so far. EWC we can just forget. Reload, while they did get top 8, was a very different tournament. Their match results, while not necessarily bad, were not particularly amazing either, especially compared to what we know this team can do. That being said, coming in as the first seed in EML is a good start. They're a top 8 team going in for me. I think they should make playoffs, barring no catastrophes, but where they'll end up exactly is a little harder to say. I think it'll come down to who they meet in the quarterfinals. There are a handful of teams that I think are better, or could at least beat them consistently enough. And if they get matched against one of those teams, then I can see them going out in the quarters. But if it's a bubble team or a Cinderella wildcard team that squeaked into playoffs, then I think they finish top 4. The top 3 in EML are genuinely so close to each other. We almost have a rock, paper, scissors situation here. The only ones that might be lagging a little behind this stage are Secret due to their slow start to the stage, but they've only picked up as the stage went on, which is the best way to have a rough patch if you're going to have one. As I said, BDS is kinda just here to tag along, but these other 3 are firing on all cylinders and are why I'd say EML is probably the second strongest region coming into the major. Now for the region that, as a whole, is more of a wild card than the team whose name is actually wild card, APAC. This region has been making big strides in recent years. We've pretty consistently had an APAC team that I would consider a top 10 team in the world, which might not sound like much, but considering where this region has been historically, I think this is worth celebrating. This is probably the best APAC has ever looked. That being said, Munich is looking like a really tough battle. The top teams from other regions are just looking that good right now, and I'm not sure there's room for an APAC team to make playoffs. But please, prove me wrong, I'm cheering for you. Enterprise is the new top team from OS this year, pretty confidently taking the region in both stages. That being said, they might be the weakest team coming into this tournament. But I want to clarify this immediately, it's not because they're bad. It's because they're still pretty new and inexperienced as a team. EWC was their first international event. Unsurprisingly, they went out bottom 4. But what that did include was them taking freaking Furia to overtime on a map. These guys are on a very similar trajectory as Team Bliss were. They dominated OS as well, but struggled in their first couple of international events, to the point where people were complaining that they were at SI that year, and while I can't argue that, I don't think it was as cut and dry as that. Bliss had potential. They just needed more time, and over the next year, they grew to be one of the top 10 teams in the world. Enterprise is on a similar path and could do something just like that, but right now, they're in the trenches. Like BDS, I think their main goal this tournament is to just not be an 0-3 team. Getting at least one win is an improvement from EWC, and that's all I can ask for, and in BO1s, that's totally doable. The remaining 3 teams in APAC might be the biggest wildcards this tournament, alongside NIP, and that's what makes them scary. D+ is Brazil's 5th team in the disguise of an APAC team. Admittedly, I don't know much about these guys, I just haven't watched them that much, so maybe that's the main reason they feel like such a wild card to me. But I mean, on paper, they have 2 former major champions in Levy and Bullet, and they're a freaking Brazilian team, so that gives them automatic siege superpowers these days. That being said, they're not the same kind of Brazilian team as the other 4 in this tournament. Teams like Furia, FaZe, and W7M, if they'd gone to APAC, would have demolished the region. But D+ hasn't had anywhere near that kind of success. The best finish they have so far is taking first in the sub-region of APAC North this stage, but then they couldn't convert that in APAC playoffs and instead come in as the 3rd seed. To make matters worse, the 2 teams that beat them in playoffs, KAG and Weibo, did so pretty handily. I think reality is they don't make it out of Swiss, and if they do, it'll definitely be an upset. In my mind, it's very possible they're a bottom 4 team going into this tournament. Weibo, formerly Bleed and Team Joel, is the most recent shining star from APAC and has been pretty consistent on the international stage. And while I don't think they're in a bad state by any means, they don't feel quite as sharp as they have been, and that might be the difference in this event. They did recently make top 8 at EWC, albeit by beating what are perhaps some of the comparatively easier opponents. Gen G were there due to EML having an extra spot, and DZ, after the first match at EWC, has been on a downward decline. Neither team qualified to Munich. They could squeak into playoffs with a 3-2. However, historically, this roster has fallen just short at major tournaments just about every time. I think they could be a serious competitor for a top 10 team in the world, but they're on the bubble, and in this tournament, the bubble means missing out on playoffs. But again, please, prove me wrong. I want you guys to do well. Cyclops are the best team in APAC right now. They've made that pretty clear. They've shown consistency, they've shown that they can be more than just the wild, chaotic team that people hate to play against. Now, they're strategically a wild card. During APAC playoffs, casters praised them for being able to do a variety of playstyles and have a variety of strategies. Yes, teams still don't know what they're going to face round to round, but it was strategic. Not just wildly jumping out every window, though they can still do that. And Reload was obviously a great event for them. You could definitely argue that the unusual tournament format played into their favor. I mean, look at this playoff bracket. Nothing about this is normal. So they needed something more solid to follow it up, and I think they now have that. Oh, and did I mention that they're doing this while playing with their coach? Which, as the casters called out during playoffs, has potentially given them a sort of buff during the game, as they don't need to call a timeout to talk to their coach. They can do it while depriving their opponent of being able to do so, and to top it all off, the coach is freaking popping off. But do I think this will lead to them having great success this tournament? No, I don't think so. They are a wildcard team that could make it to playoffs, but if they do, like Weibo, it'll likely be with a 3-2 in Swiss. And while they are the best team in APAC, I'm not sure if they're the best team from APAC internationally. That might still go to Weibo. Over the last year and a half or so, the top 3 regions have all been pretty competitive with one another, and it's been nice to see. But as always, someone has to be at the bottom, and while I wouldn't say they've fallen that far behind, I am biased after all, the NAL has definitely fallen into that 3rd place internationally, and looking into Munich, I'm not really expecting that to change. Wildcard is probably the 2nd biggest surprise of this tournament for me, only behind BDS. They've been knocking on the door of NA's top 4 for a while now, but they've always come short. They're consistently middle of the pack, and that's just kind of where they lie. They've definitely beaten expectations just by making it here, but I don't think I have any expectations beyond this. While this is not their first international event, this will be their first major and first normal tournament as a team. Their biggest highlight is their pretty impressive run at Reload, but for any team on this side of the playoff bracket, it really feels like there's an automatic asterisk next to any mention of this success. But they did have a couple of genuinely impressive wins that we have to give them credit for. That being said, when push comes to shove and they need to step up the most, they always seem to fall short. It was a big upset when they qualified, but then they immediately got stomped by M80, which kind of took all the wind out of their sails for me. Yes, I know it was a long day, but they'll have even longer days with tougher opponents at this tournament. Unless they run into SSG, which I'll explain why later, they could be fighting to not go 0-3 this tournament. Not that I think that they can't win a match, but I just feel like the opposition is just that much stronger overall this tournament compared to Reload. And they'll be diving right off the deep end with Team Secret as their first opponent. In a way, Shopify Rebellion has become the new Dark Zero for me, and no, it's not just because they have Canadian. They're a good team, one of the best from NA, and a solid threat internationally. But they get to a certain point in the competition and they just hit a ceiling that they can't seem to punch through. It's not like they don't have the talent to do it. They've got some big names on the roster and ones who have reached the top of Siege Esports more than once. But right now, I just feel like they're missing that extra little thing to get them over the edge. That extra magic that teams like Fury and FaZe have for when the going gets tough. Their stage 1 was good, there's no arguing that. They made it to playoffs at EWC, but then fell short in quarterfinals. Interestingly, all of their maps at EWC, win or lose, ended in a 7-5. It's a double-edged sword because that means they can keep it close when they lose, but they can't quite pull away when they win, and that's why I think they keep hitting this ceiling. As for Munich, I think they definitely could make playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did, but I think quarterfinals is their peak right now. There are just so many good teams at this event, and we can't fit them all into playoffs. Somebody has to be upset, and I think that could be Shopify. Man, being an SSG fan these days it's something. Long story short, when it's their day, they're world beaters and can take on the top dogs. But while the highs are big, the lows are even bigger. When they get beat bad, and sometimes it feels like it's a flip of the coin which SSG you'll get on match day. But overall, I think I can pretty safely say that SSG is the best it's been in years, probably since they lifted the hammer in 2020. Sure, they haven't won anything yet, but they're making slow but steady progress. Top 8 in Atlanta, top 8 SI24, top 8 in Montreal, top 6 SI25, and 4th at EWC. And that last one was a narrow loss to Furia as well. It's been a long road to get back to where they were in 2020, but they're almost there. They've got the talent, they've got the systems in place, they just need to fix their consistency. And also, I'm not allowed to watch their matches live because if I do, they lose, which again makes being a fan of them very, very difficult. If they're at their best, they make playoffs, probably as a 3-2 team because they like to do things the hard way for whatever reason, but they'll make it. But if they slip up when it matters, they'll just miss out, and that's when someone like Shopify or an APAC team swoops in to fill that void. They're a playoff bubble team, but with a very high ceiling. Also, their current kryptonite of wildcard is in this tournament, so they better not meet in an elimination match. The core of M80 has had its ups and downs, and it all started in Manchester. They won that, but then didn't qualify for the next major. Part of their roster made top 4 at SI, but then they missed out on EWC. Now they take the top spot in NA. The team is playing well, and the vibes seem to be good. From that major winning roster, they've swapped Spirits and Fett for Kino and Fabian. Kino in particular seems to have slotted in well. The casters have repeatedly pointed out how he's improved as an individual on this team. He's been a very up and down player historically, but has managed to stick through it and find a place on M80. While this isn't the most scientific method for deciding this, since they're in the middle of one of their highs, I think they'll at least make playoffs and could even land top 4. I'm not sure if they'll have the edge to make it top 2, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they got there. Between them and SSG at the top of NA, they're the more consistent of the two right now, but, and maybe this is just me being biased, SSG might have the higher peaks right now. And once again, it just depends on if they show up on the day. And last but certainly not least, we have what is probably the scariest region in the world, the SAL. The Ninjas have returned to the top of Brazil after some years in the trenches, and it's nice to see. I think they surprised everyone by taking the top spot during the group stage. Granted, it was only by a round differential over Furia, but hey, they still did it. And their only losses came at the hands of 2 of the top teams in the region. Things were looking great. I was excited and had high hopes for them going into the major. They could be potential contenders. But then, playoffs happened, and my sentiment has changed completely. First came FaZe. 2 heartbreaking losses, 8-7, 8-7 in OT. Had one round gone differently, we would have had at least a third map, and potentially a completely different narrative. But no, we moved to the lower bracket with Los, a match that everybody, myself included, had written off as an easy sweep for the Ninjas. When I started making my predictions while the SAL playoffs were still happening, I didn't even have Los as a consideration. That's how certain the result seemed. But then, one of the wildest BO3s I've seen in a long time unfolded before my eyes. NIP was not in top form. This current Los squad probably played the best Siege they ever have. 3 maps and 44 out of 45 rounds played. NIP only won 2 more rounds than Los to secure their ticket to Munich. And the worst part? They almost lost it. There almost wasn't a third map. A massive 1v3 clutch with the clock hitting 0 and the diffuser being planted is what it took to save NIP. The round was beautifully insane, and I highly recommend you go watch it if you haven't. But in the end, only by the skin of their teeth did they qualify for the major. I could very well be talking about Los right now. Following this absolute shit show of a barn burner, they immediately lost 2-0 to W7M, with it once again going to OT in both maps. This series of events has drastically altered my perspective of this team. 7 maps played, all 7 went to OT. I can excuse the W7M and FaZe losses a little more because those teams are who they are, but that Los game has me worried for NIP. This is the worst time to slip up. W7M slipped up early in the stage, but brought it back in time for the major. NIP is on the opposite trajectory, and if I have the choice, I'd much rather be W7M in that case. That being said, I still think NIP could very well make it to playoffs, but quarters is probably the best I see for them now. If they let things get that close again, instead of Los, it could be Keg or Weibo on the other side, with someone like Reaps shooting back at you, and they will make you pay. It's stuff like this that has turned them from a serious contender to more of a wild card. Just ahead of the Ninjas, we have FaZe. By their standards, this stage was a little rough. That being said, their rough is better than most teams in the world. When push comes to shove, they know what they have to do, and I have no doubt they can do it. In my mind, in spite of their slip-ups at recent events, I have to see a lot worse out of them to not consider them contenders and a top 4 team going in. It's not much insight, but I mean, it's FaZe Clan, that's all you need to know. Looking back at how their stage started, I think W7M are going to be pretty happy coming in as the number 2 seed. Obviously, they would have preferred number 1, but I don't think they'll be that disappointed. At the end of Playday 4, these guys found themselves in 7th place, outside of even a playoff spot. But they got their act together for the second half of the stage and finished the group stage in 3rd. Following that, their playoffs were a mix of ups and downs. A couple maps they got stomped, but more often than not, they were the ones doing the stomping. While I think a fair number of people would say W7M are ever so slightly behind FaZe and Furia, and I wouldn't say they're wrong, I think you could put these 3 in just about any order at the top of SAL, and nobody would bat an eye. As I said, they and NIP are on opposite trajectories, and with how their stages ended, they've pretty much swapped places in my power rankings. W7M has gone from a bubble team to an almost guarantee for playoffs. Right now, my gut even says they could be one of the 3-0 teams in Swiss. Maybe not one of the top 2 teams going into the tournament, but they're no strangers to entering the playoffs in a top seed. But as impressive as W7M has been, there is one team that is almost certainly better. The team that I think is a shoo-in for a 3-0 in Swiss, and my tournament favorites, Furia. They're just firing on all cylinders right now. They only dropped 1 match in group stage and only 2 maps in playoffs. I'm getting the same vibes off of them that I got during their domination of the 2023-2024 season. They are a scary team, and I'm not sure if there's anything anyone can do to slow them down. My only advice for other teams is, for your own sake, do not take Furia to Bank. Just don't. Don't even consider it. Even if Bank is your best map, I assure you, their Bank is better. It's not much of an analysis, but barring a catastrophe, they should be top 4 at minimum. And even then, I really do think they'll be in the finals. It'll probably be Furia versus whoever the surprise team is this tournament, like Beast Coast at Manchester and Team Secret at EWC. Except for 1 or 2 teams on either end, this major is going to be really hard to predict. In recent months, the international competition has been the closest it's ever been, and it makes for some really entertaining siege for us at home. As far as my actual predictions go for the Swiss stage, here's what I've got. It's pretty in line with what I've discussed. These top 5 I'm almost certain will make playoffs. Whether or not they are the top 5, we'll just have to wait and see. If I were to swap anyone out, it'd be one of the bottom 3 for either Shopify, NIP, or Weibo. I'm totally expecting there to be an NA versus NA match for a final qualification spot. The most likely is probably SSG versus Shopify, in which case, I take SSG. As I said earlier, G2 is a potential playoff bubble team for me, but anytime I bet against them, they do well, so if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. But there you have it. Let me know your predictions down below. I'm sure they'll be different from mine. At the time of recording, I'm almost at 100 subs, and it'd be really sweet to hit that milestone so soon. But now let's sit back, relax, and enjoy what should be a very entertaining tournament.